And thank you all of you for inviting me to do this webinar and the Finland Association. I hear before about that, and I really looking forward to meet you in person. So, mm, allow me to provide some context before presenting the results of a study that we are about to publish about the therapeutic potential of ayahuasca in grief processes. Well, here in Western countries, we have some particular difficulties readjusting after the death of someone that we really love, for various reasons. We have born in a post-Christian and scientific and atheist culture whose narratives to explain life and death tell us that life is a random combination of amino acids that came together by chance, and that the only certainty that we have in life is that we all of us will die, swallowed by a blind and unimaginable nothingness that places a definitive and eternal end to our personal story. And with this cultural narrative about random individual lives living in a linear timeline, to end dissolved in this nothingness makes really difficult to find meaning in life and death of those who love, and of course in our own life and death as well. So, in fact, even a life that is full of purpose, that the one of my dear friend of regard that passed away 2 months ago, he was living a life that it was fully, but it seems like a cruel joke when after all we live and work for, one day suddenly we no longer exist. And that's why it's so common to hear in grief therapy sessions, what was all of this for? This is also why thoughts of suicide are so common in the grieving processes, no? And for this reason, finding meaning reconstruction, or meaning making have been some of the oldest mechanism of change explored in therapy when Western people face their own death or the death of their loved ones. Because our story, our cultural narrative, draw a meaningless life and death. And this doesn't happen in many other cultures that draws our personal life as a part of a life with capital L, or that consider an afterlife, or that understand time as a cyclical way instead of a linear way that concludes with a final end. In the West, we don't have narratives, spiritual or existential maps, cartographies, or cosmovision that give meaning to life and to death. So during the grieving process, we find ourselves drifting and trying to make sense of what is probably one of the most difficult chapters in our timeline. And of course, this lack of existential or spiritual map is reflected at a sociocultural level in the absence of ceremonies or sacred tools to navigate this death, and in our case, no rebirth process. No. For example, here in Spain, when someone died, you have the option to view their body behind the glass in an aseptic institution to say goodbye to his precious body before receiving his ashes into a urn. And when you are ready, you can call to family or friends to place the ashes in a cemetery or in a place that is specifically designed for that purpose, because it's not even legal to scatter them in a location that is particularly meaningful for those who love them, where they can continue visiting or to connect with him. We have lost our sacred places because cemeteries are no longer such. We have lost our knowledge about how to accompany those who are passing, how to wash them, how to dress them, our rituals to navigate these difficult moments together as a community, and all those moments that will come throughout the next year, no, the birthday, Christmas, all these special dates in the calendar. We have lost our sacraments to connect with something greater than ourselves, our tools, our incense, our songs, offering prayers that help us to navigate these processes within a map that gives meaning to the life and death of those we love. Is even cruel, no? Because here in Spain we are given 2 days of work after the death of our own child. And when we return to work to produce again, many people, fortunately not all, but a significant proportion of people avoid us because they don't know what to say. There is no culture and tradition and relational approach about how to deal with death and grief. And the bereaved are left alone without a map to help him to navigate in the middle of a stormy nights. So the study that I am about to present seek to explore the potential of a sacrament that have been used in indigenous peoples from South America for centuries. No, this is ayahuasca, that is called the vine of death, and we try to integrate this sacrament, this tool, into a Western therapeutic model based on a meaning-reconstruction approach to help to address our own challenge, such as coping with the loss of the loved one in a deeply individualistic and atheistic and materialistic society. So 4 years ago, when the first restrictions of the COVID pandemic began to lift, we initiate a 3-arm non-randomized clinical study to assess the efficacy of ayahuasca-assisted psychotherapy program for the prevention of prolonged grief disorder. No? Prolonged grief disorder is a new diagnosis that has been included in the DSM-5 2 years ago, more or less. And well, these manuals always says what is normal or is not normal, no, and they are putting a cutoff, no, in variables such as suffering or time that are continuous, no. So this is quite arbitrary, no? So we wanted to avoid this kind of diagnosis and to work with people that they were facing what is called a normal grief because it was within the first year, after the loss. So this study compared the efficacy of a support program that includes 2 ayahuasca groupal ceremonies within, with the same support program without these 2 ayahuasca sessions, and a group of no treatment to control for a natural remission over time. So the inclusion criteria involved bereaved individuals who lost a first-degree relative within the first year, experiencing a high severity of grief, with a Texas Revised Inventory, that is the main outcome, the main measure, scoring up to 40. So this study involves a pre- and post-assessment and a 3-month follow-up. And for ethical reasons, both control groups that didn't drink ayahuasca during the intervention, they had the opportunity to drink ayahuasca twice at the end of the follow-up if the severity of grief persisted. Here you can see, if you are interested in the protocol, in this publication you can see the details. And in the next one, you can see a case report of one participant in the study, to see an example, of these kind of processes. So we, the Santo Daime Church donated 10 liters of ayahuasca And we performed the analysis of the biochemical compounds, and doses were equivalent to 0.75 milligrams of DMT per kilo, divided in two separated administrations lasting for 30 minutes each. So here you can see the profile of the subjective effects in the 5-dimensional altered state of consciousness rating scale in the experimental group. And you can see that is similar to a medium dose of other classical psychedelics. So this is the place where we did the ayahuasca sessions that were held in groups of a maximum 8 participants, supported by at least 4 facilitators, in a beautiful place surrounded by nature next to Montserrat Mountain. That is this one that you can see in the corner, corner. This is our sacred mountain in Barcelona. And during these sessions, moments of quiet instrumental music were alternated with moments of silence where participants can listen to the sound of nature, the wind, the birds, a pico that were around all the time. And the integration of the ayahuasca experiences were conducted 3 or 4 days later in alignment with the non-directive principles of restorative retelling, which facilitates the assimilation of the phenomenology of the ayahuasca experience while helping the person to reconstruct their schemas and narratives about themselves, other people, the disease, and the world through the process of accommodation. This integration process has been described in detail in this publication. Well, the support program consisted in 9 weekly individual online sessions, each lasting 50 minutes, that was grounded in a meaning-reconstruction approach. So this program follows a tripartite approach that helps mourners overcome obstacles in making sense of the loss and rework their attachment to the disease and reconstruct their identities in the light of the experience, of the death. So let's explain and provide some examples to illustrate this therapeutic approach. Not all the grief processes are traumatic, but when they are, it's important to address trauma first to prevent the person from becoming stuck in the process. So in this first phase of the protocol, this was focused on trauma reprocessing, and we invite to the participants to assimilate and make sense of the death of their loved ones by retelling their difficult memories very, very slow, trying to keep in participants within a window of tolerance while managing and coping with intense emotions. This is the same methodology that we use for integration of the experiences. So let me give you an example. The third participant in the study was a young woman who lost her boyfriend to suicide. So she was outside his apartment door, screaming and banging on the door and calling to the police to stop what her boyfriend had told her he was going to do in a farewell text message. So in the therapy session, we focus on revisiting the experience she went through from the moment she received that message until the police escort her back home after being witness of her boyfriend's body lying on the floor. So processes like this often require more than 2 sessions until they are emotionally integrated, allowing the person to recount their experience without dissociation or being overwhelmed by waves of intense emotions. But when she drank ayahuasca, let me share a part of her narrative during the integration process. She explained, she says, "There came a moment when I became him, climbing those endless spiral staircase. I saw myself looking at the guns, looking at the room, searching for the keys. It wasn't a linear sequence. I start to see myself loading the gun, going up the stairs, hearing all the sounds of the police behind the door, hearing myself on the other side of the door. And when I finally reach the top, I open and close the door of the terrace, sit on the terrace, and I shoot my head. And then the sequence starts over, those stairs again. I don't know how many times the same scene repeat until I stopped to see anything. The words cosmic solitude came to me, and I think I felt the loneliness he felt at that moment. Before, when someone told me, at least he's stopped suffering, I would get upset. And now, for the first time, I understand he truly had stopped suffering. Now I feel more a compassionate sadness rather than a sadness of desolation and despair of I don't want to live or life has no meaning. So this report shows us how ayahuasca also induced the reprocessing of traumatic memories repeatedly as part of the healing process in a spontaneous way, as we do with cognitive behavioral therapy, for example, with exposure. However, instead of reliving these memories in the first person, ayahuasca used to evoke memories experienced from the perspective of the deceased, showing us how deeply intertwined the pain of our beloveds is within our own body. And of course, if we want to, so we should take note of the natural mechanism of change or mechanism that's a psychedelic trigger for adapting to such a traumas in order to develop more refined therapeutic techniques in our professional practices. Of course, if we have to do an exposure session, um, inviting to the bereaved to process all these memories, but in the fits of the disease, it could be very delicate. No, it could cause iatrogenesis, but we can see that how ayahuasca doesn't do only that, no, but also show this deep solitude, no, that the disease maybe was feeling, no, and how she can feel this empathy for them, no, how she can feel this compassion for him, no, when before it was guilt and it was no sense and it was anger, no? So there is a transformation of this process, no. So this second part of the psychotherapeutic protocol is focused on reconstructing the bond with our loved one. Because as we are part of this materialistic culture, many times it's a challenge for us to understand that just because, for example, our parents have died, it doesn't mean that they have ceased to exist for us. Our parents, our father, will be always our father, whether they are alive or not. So, who is this father now that continues to exist for us despite his physical absence? And in what way we want to continue the bond with him, if we chose to do so, is the goal of the second phase of the psychotherapy. This is something that that it was very difficult for us to understand, and we bring this knowledge from the transcultural psychology when we begin to visit other civilization, other cultures, and we saw the strong bond of connection that the bereaved have with their loved ones, with their ancestors, with all those that continue existing for them, no? And they feed them, they ask them, they pray for them, and we saw that it was important to continue existing this bond of connection, no? So the second part, so let me share an example of how the process of continuing bond with our beloveds unfolds spontaneously under the effects of ayahuasca, sharing part of that narrative. No, this participant lost her mother during the COVID pandemic, and she says it was as if I were living a kind of nirvana. It was like being a baby in my mother's womb. It was freedom, infinite, unconditional love, like a particle of love, a little bubble impossible to harm. And suddenly I had he puts her hands on her head, the realization that it was my mother giving me this gift so that I could feel what I was like, what it was like when she created me. And when I realized it was her, she became more intense because she knew I had realized her presence, and we entered into a direct communication. It was as if she were here, an enormous presence of pure light and love. And suddenly she entered me, and the two of us felt at it once. I touch my body, I still feel the sensation. And it was her body, her arms. It was her, but it was me. I was crying with gratitude. It was so deep and intense that only tears could flow from the precious and unique experience of this is what you really feel when someone has come to visit you. It was the truest thing I have ever felt. She left me the gift of learning that only by being connected to myself, I can access her. She will not leave me because we are all and there is no separation. And even though I don't see her, I can be with her the more I am within myself. So, as you can see in this experience, this internal image of the disease is transformed, no? Because she was remembering to her mother in the hospital with these tubes, no? This was her last image, and this last image has a very strong print in ourselves, no? So each time that we connect with them, just remembering, taking some memories or visiting some places or whatever, each time that we connect with them, we do it through this wound, through this internal image that we have from them that is probably this last image. It's very difficult to access to other memories and images when you have this last moment, no, of difficulty with them. But in this way, this internal image is transformed. Uh, Now she is seen to her mother as pure light, as love, as her own body, and this image, this internal image, changed directly the way that we related with them, and the way that we relate, that we can see the world again, because we pass from see it through this wound to see it through this gratitude and love. So this is something that we need to achieve in psychotherapy, because this is the most important click in the grieving process. But it's not easy to achieve that in psychotherapy. But plant medicines do it very fast, just in a few hours, with these kind of experiences. And the techniques that we use in psychotherapy are the empty chair, to talk with them, no? Are for example, the imaginal, a guided visual imagination, no? To talk with them. But it's very different when we try to guide it in therapy, that when suddenly these experiences happen in a natural way. So finally, the third phase of the protocol, and this third phase of the therapeutic protocol focus on reconstructing ourselves and our identity. No, who is this mother who lost her only child? Does she continue being a mother? At least in Spain, we don't have even a word to name this status. So it's about where do I begin to reconstruct a world that has been shattered by the loss. And it's not just about what we do, but where we do it from. And for this, in psychotherapy, we use the BAL survey, for example, to use values as a solid anchor from which we can take the first step to reconstruct our life. However, the process of self-reconstruction under the effects of ayahuasca are more likely that there's always ayahuasca is much more creative than all the psychologists and all our techniques, as you can see here. No? And this participant explained her composition. She did it after as part of her integration in a spontaneous way. No? And she says, ayahuasca showed me three parts of myself. The one that receives the experience in the present moment. The one that witnessed this experience and can look again towards the future. And an ancestral wiser part that nurtures me. As you can see, she is divided like in three, no? In the corner, and there are other two in the middle of the photo. She says, my father, my ex-husband, and my partner, all of them dead in the last 5 years, are with me, supporting me from behind. There are those three trunks where I can always lean and rest in nature. I was given wings to imagine again, and a seed was planted in my womb. I don't know what it will become, but I know that it's something good and it's safe here. In my chest, I feel a strong love that expands, multiplies, and radiates everywhere. My son, that is in the corner, in the bottom, receives the gift of this experience, and we hold hands to continue walking together over the stone's path that extends in front of me, in front of ourselves. My dog Shiva, that is around here, is next to her, also in the bottom of the photo, accompanies us. She is my guardian. There is a light of my forehead reminding me that I'm not only part of this earth, but also I am connected with something bigger, represented by the light above in the cosmos. This experience is framed in a lotus flower, which symbolizes the beauty that grows from the mud. Just to put a little bit of context, no? But for example, indigenous traditions understand the self not only as our own body, but also as our community and territory. Nature, plants and trees are also beings that are part of themselves, no? And ayahuasca once again help us to reconstruct ourselves, not with our values, no, but by broadening the limited construction of our identities in our individualistic Western society and grounding in a broader perspective of the self, which comprise all those we love, no matter if they are animals, plants, or humans, or they are alive or not. And it's really powerful to understand that as much as you love, as great as you are. And let me share with you, because as we use ayahuasca inside of a model of psychedelic assisted therapy, you know, we didn't do a ritual, we didn't make Icaros, we just use this indigenous sacrament within our own paradigm. But we did a pilot study before, and what we saw it was that it was many times difficult for the participants to anchor the grief process in their ceremonies, and people drink ayahuasca and begin to have an experience with the balls that have a problem just before, or the dog that they didn't feed it before coming, or whatever. No, so in order to anchor the grief process during the ayahuasca ceremonies, we did a simple dynamic. No, so right before starting the first ayahuasca session, participants introduce their loved ones to the rest of the group by sharing some photos and stories of the deceased. These are very emotional moments and sessions, no? So they begin to talk about them, and after that they drink ayahuasca, and they have, this is a way to prepare the setting, no? Because we are not working with clear intentions, no? We don't say, what do you want to focus this session? No, we don't do it in that way. We just tell them to be as open as they can, and surrender, not to the experience, in order that the medicine can go wherever it has to go. No, but this is the way to prepare the mindset. No, and this dynamic of the sharing the photos and everything is replaced with another technique that is called the dual rose art therapy technique before the second ayahuasca, in order to not repeat the same thing. No, so we invited to the participants to engage in a reflective process while listening to calming music, to slowly dismantle a rose, placing its petals, serrated leaves, and thorns into a container of water in a free and creative manner. So in this exercise, the thorny parts of the flower symbolize the more challenging aspects of the grieving process, while the fragrant petals represented the more beautiful aspects of the relationship, and memories. So once they have anchored these meanings to these objects, the photos or the rose, participants are invited to place the photos and the water container near their mattresses, serving as a reminder of the disease and the grief over all the ayahuasca session. So here you can see the demographic characteristics in the three groups. The AMR group is the ayahuasca meaning reconstruction. The MR is the meaning reconstruction, the one that only did the support, and the other one is no treatment, so the one who only assess the pass of the time there. So as you can see in all these socio-demographic characteristics, there were not any kind of difference between groups. In these first two graphs, you can see the severity of normal and prolonged grief disorder, symptomatology of prolonged grief disorder, in the three groups at 3 points assessment. So as in the previous tables, no. So, claro, the group that includes ayahuasca ceremonies within the support program is highlighted in green. And here you can see a significant reduction of normal and prolonged grief symptomatology at post-assessment and at the follow-up assessment for the group that include the ayahuasca ceremonies. And in the table below, you can see that these reductions in grief symptoms shows from a moderate to a large between effect size, ranging from 0.7 to 1.5. So this means that to participate in these ayahuasca sessions can make a great difference in grief symptoms relief compared with both control groups. But allow me to highlight the effect size between the participants of the ayahuasca group, because as you can see, this effect size is about 2 after the intervention and in the follow-up assessment. And this is a really large effect size. I must point out that to date, we didn't found such a large intragroup effect size in the scientific literature for any type of proposed intervention, whether in the area of prevention or in the area of prolonged grief disorder treatment. So, claro, there is a general consensus that is not recommended any kind of support or intervention until 6 to 12 months after the death of a loved one, as it could even cause iatrogenesis, or doesn't work, or it could cause iatrogenesis. But in this case, and in this sample, our results indicates that bereavers shouldn't have to wait to use ayahuasca for grief, because beyond assessing the reduction in the grief symptoms, we can also observe benefits in other variables such as post-traumatic growth, which encompasses positive changes in philosophy of life, self-perception, interpersonal relationships, and a greater appreciation of life. So differences in post-traumatic growth were observed between the ayahuasca group and both control groups at post-intervention, and over the no treatment group at follow-up assessment, with an effect size ranging from medium to large also. So here we can see the results of 3 potential mechanisms of therapeutic change. And let me focus on meaning made, because as you can see, is the one who showed the largest effect size between the groups and within the ayahuasca group compared to the other potential mediators such as psychological flexibility. And we have to say that self-clarity is about meaning making also, no? But is more focused on self-construction. So in this first graph, you can observe a significant increase in meaning made in the group of ayahuasca when it's compared with the no treatment group in the post-assessment and with both control groups in the follow-up assessment. And we have to take into account that the relationship between meaning and psychedelics is everywhere implied, in the forms of insights, understanding, changes in values or perspective about ourselves, the disease, the others, the world is everywhere. So as you can see here, there is a strong correlation between meaning made and the relief of grief symptoms. So I would like to encourage to all the professionals who are working in integration, and especially to those who are working in the area of grief and palliative care, to not forget meaning made as a potential therapeutic mechanism of change. So here in this, you can see the level of satisfaction of the participants with the psychotherapeutic process. Not everybody was super satisfied, as you can see. And with the ayahuasca sessions, and as well as the adverse effects reported by the experimental group. I must say that most of these adverse effects are expected with an ayahuasca intake. And outside of the Western paradigm, most of them will not be considered as an adverse effect by itself, no? But like a part of a psychosomatic purge. So I want to explain, no, that not for everybody was effective, this model, no? There was a dropout in the experimental group claiming to see no meaning in their ayahuasca experience, so she left the study after the first ayahuasca session. And we also witnessed one participant experiencing an unbearable chest pain, which extended for 2 or 3 hours after the session. So it was something similar to what happened in the Takotsubo syndrome, known as broken heart, that it is like an atrophy of the heart, no, and people can die of that, no. So we were like quite afraid during this session, and we thought that maybe an angiogram could be a preventive measure for those who are struggling with a very severe grief and have problems for breath and cardiac problems. And also, two participants lost consciousness during the peak effect. And although they did not need medication to return to a normal waking state, the psychedelic experience faded. So, but however, they were able to make substantial changes effortlessly without the ayahuasca phenomenology. So perhaps we could explain these changes by referring to the neuroplastic and the neuroregenerative potential of these plants, no? But we have also witnessed processes that we don't know how to explain. For example, this woman who lost her sister by suicide, she explained, when I found ayahuasca or ayahuasca found me, the only thing in my head was to meet my sister and and get rid of the guilt I felt. I remember I wrote on a paper before the session, how to make peace with the guilt. Why did my sister leave me? And during the ayahuasca session, my experience was not how I expected it to be. I didn't meet my sister and spent most of the time on the toilet. I was disappointed. And on the way back home, the next day after the session on the train, when they leave the place, not in 24 hours after the session, I received a message from my friend in Gothenburg, in Sweden, a friend that she didn't take contact for years. No, she told me that she met a random guy in a bar the day before, and he turned out to be a medium. He was from Boston, but was on his way back after a conference in Denmark. He said that he had a message for my friend, so for her, no? He says, it's not for you, it's for your friend, Carla. I changed the name to maintain her anonymity. I have her sister here, and she is telling me that the following. She should not feel any guilt, and the boyfriend was not the reason why this happened. She is also showing me desserts and coffee, which is what we used to do every day together, no? Find nice coffee places. And she says, I still don't know what to believe. The same day evening as I was taking ayahuasca, my friend, thousands of miles away, receives messages from a random man in a bar with the exact same answers that I asked myself before the session. So these things happen. This is the first time that I share this report because when many times when you don't have answers, you don't present these kind of things. No, it's very difficult to understand, but this also happened. No, this is a photo of the nature that we have there in the place where we were holding these sessions. And as we can see in this last report, no, that death is a mystery, just as life is, and we have no map or card to navigate this mystery. When things are going well, we can relax and let the wind take us wherever it may, no? But when we find ourselves alone in the middle of a storm, in the middle of a tsunami, struggling to survive, it's not easy to navigate without experience, without tools or maps to guide our journey. And I want you to understand that borrowing a sacred tool from other cultures, such as ayahuasca, only grant us an experience that allows us to see beyond our own narratives for a moment. But if this glimpse is not connected to a spiritual worldwide, a community, landscape, narrative that integrates these insights into a broader relational framework, it's easy for these glimpses to dissolve over time as smoke dissolves in the air. So this study, this presentation just presents some of the territories, no, that are like these intrapsychic territories, no, that maybe are slightly illuminated with some lighthouses, no. What when altered state of consciousness are evoked in a grief process, such as the way that traumatic events are processed, or the power to reconstruct bond of connections with our loved ones, or the reconstruction of the survivor identity. But the territory of grief is vaster. And I hope this study can serve to inspire to reconstruct many more lighthouses to help to reconnect these experiences within our ritual and ceremonial spaces, no, with our own tools, with our own community and local ecology, and with a broader world view that help us to make sense of death and to contribute to this life with capital L. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It was fascinating and quite touching as well. I started to think about the limitedness of life and the points in the beginning about how we as modern Western societies approach death is lacking in many respects, and we don't have the resources and traditions how to approach this part of life and how it's hospitalized.
We can feel very disorientated, and we can feel really lost if we don't have any kind of existential map or cartography, you know, to make meaning to the life of the ones we love, no? And also this kind of rites of passage, no? So we understand how important is context and to be together when we do a psychedelic experience, no? Because imagine when someone is dying, no? If it will be beautiful, no, to stay with them, to provide some music, prayers, and to be together, because when we are together in these sacred moments, the seeds of resilience are planted in the family and the communitarian context, no, and it's much easier to process grief when we are all together, no, as a family or as a community. So this is knowledge that we had before, you know. So it is before that death was part of an institutionalized society, no. So we lost our knowledge about how to see to accompany no to those who are dying, and to celebrate pues all the special dates in the calendar together, no? And nobody's doing anything, no? The industry, the institutions are doing it for you, and it's like we don't see death in our life, no? And we lost all this culture, no? All this sacred culture, no? To stay together.
Yeah. I'm thinking about this related to these different traditions in grieving. I assume that this was like self-selected participants, and I'm thinking of how like persons who have different worldviews and beliefs or religions, like atheists and Christians and agnostics and all kinds of different backgrounds. How do they? Was there like a spiritual component built in this meaning making intervention, or how were the spiritual aspects like handled?
Mm, mm. Yes, for example, in our so this is the reason why we cannot work with a traditional curandero in this kind of studies, or with a santo daime ritual, because we were holding this uh, experiences and this contact with this medicine in a neutral context, no? So the music was instrumental. There was no lyrics at all in order to not influence in the experience of the participants, no? We didn't use any kind of symbol, any kind of prayer, any kind of anything, no? In order to be as much as neutral as we can, no? So we held people that were Muslim, how do you say Arabic, no?
Yeah, Muslim.
But that we need to schedule the program of the because he had to pray, so something very very religious, no? We held Buddhist people and Christian people, and of course most of them completely atheist people, no? Because we're from Western cultures principally, no? The people. So, in that way, with this instrumental music that is not very, very evocative, it's just like a pillow to be comfortable from time to time. Other times are silent. Uh, they can have their own experience, and of course, these Muslim people, as a participant, connect with Allah in a very strong way, at the same time, in the same place, was a Christian participant, no, connecting with Virgin Mary, no. So, and they were together in the same room, no, and they are able to share their own experience, no, and to give meaning to their own experience in their own cultural and religious framework.
Yeah, I see. I see. Let's see what kinds of questions we have here in the from the audience. Uh, there are a couple of questions of how to partake in this kind of ceremony. Uh, I can also let them ask for themselves. So I guess I only press this button here, and mm, I'm thinking about this question about a person who is in therapy process themselves and who are thinking of something like this could help them, but they are afraid to do it without medical supervision. Are there any chances to get into study as a subject? Where to start?
Mhm.
This is
Uh,
a common question.
Yes, yes. Well, as a subject, so we finish this study. Probably we are not going to open a new one. It takes a lot of time to do this kind of studies, not to find money to do the research. Is difficult to get the permissions to do it here in Spain because we have another kind of, how do you say, legislation, because ayahuasca is not illegal here. So, and as we are not using as a medicine, as a drug, because we are not working with people with chronic grief, with a disorder, it's like for prevention for normal people. We don't need to go through the medical agency to ask for permissions, just an ethical committee. But it's not easy, it's not easy. So at that point, we have end the inclusion of participants. We are about to publish the results. So today I'm going to send it if I have time in the afternoon, no? And but I think, so what I am beginning to see is that now that I'm working in a ketamine clinic, I'm working with people with grief also. This is not the, how do you say, it's like off level because ketamine is allowed for treatment resistant depression, but you can use it as an off level for people that was is about to suicide because of their grief also, no. And what I have been seeing is that ayahuasca or ketamine, they are tools, they are sacred tools, but it's not the goal to use it. O sea, they are just tools that open a place within you or without you, I don't know, but where you can connect with those you love, and it's very difficult to connect with them because of the pain, no, because you related to them from the absence instead of the presence and the love and the gratitude, no. So I think that ayahuasca can be a tool, but it can be other tools. Maybe, I don't know, maybe breath work could work
Mm.
even, no. I don't know, I didn't try it, no, but
Yeah, there have been some trials with breath work and some also therapeutic effects, but I would guess that the effects are not as pronounced as with psychedelics.
mm,
But yes, in principle, it would be possible to do ketamine-assisted psychotherapy or some kind of like this kind of using ketamine for even for processing grief, even in Finland, as long as the grief process would be labeled as depression,
mhm,
because it's in principle possible to use ketamine to treat depression.
mhm,
But at this moment, it's not possible. I know that there are some attempts to drive this through.
mhm.
And I'm interested in this, like ayahuasca being legal in Spain. Does it only apply to this like this brew that is made of these plants, or I assume that DMT is illegal
Yeah,
in Spain?
exactly. Exactly. Ayahuasca is not legal in Spain. The thing
Okay.
is that it's not illegal.
Okay. So yeah, not
It's not.
illegal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And yes, we are talking about ayahuasca as the mixture, and we are talking about the plants by itself. The principal active of DMT is illegal. But when
Mhm.
you are using ayahuasca, also DMT, there are many things that contain DMT, the brain of the lambs also, and we eat it, So it's not about the principal active, and that for that the plants are illegal. The only plants that are illegal in Spain are coca, cannabis, and opium. These are the only three that are illegal.
Yeah,
The other ones are not illegal.
I
It's
see.
regulated, it's
Yeah.
not regulated yet, but are not illegal.
So it's basically almost like I'm thinking from a methodological perspective as a scientist myself, how to approach this. So it's sort of like a bit like naturalistic study, because it's not medicinal research,
Mhm.
not research in medicine on a controlled substance or like a specific molecule. You do research on this brew, a natural brew, and so how did you get the ethical approval? Was it from which agency?
It's an ethical committee that it can came usually from a hospital,
Yeah,
it can came from a university also, but principally is in a hospital. But if you want to do, for example, observational research, and you want to begin to take data from a real world evidence, and you can begin to take data of the communities that are using ayahuasca here in Spain. This only for that you only need a committee, an ethical committee approval from a university. You
I
know,
see.
because
Yeah,
in one university you cannot do a clinical size. You cannot do a clinical study as we did. For that, you need the ethical committee of a hospital. That
yeah, I
are.
see. If you administer the substance, then you need this medical approval. Yes, I know that there are ayahuasca ceremonies in Finland as well, although ayahuasca is not. I don't know the specifics, but DMT is of course legal, but ayahuasca is not specifically controlled, but because it contains DMT, so that's why it's like in theory it's illegal. But there are these retreats in Finland being organized, and we are actually doing research on these retreat participants, how it affects their well-being. So it's interesting, this like with the legality thing, and from this therapeutic perspective, it all becomes blended.
But this is very beautiful and important, no? Because I think that especially for grief and probably for many other challenge or crisis that we have to face, uh, it's not the same to take ayahuasca or psilocybin in a therapy room with your therapist, you know, that to do it in a place in nature where you are connected with this ecology and nature, and when you are connected with these people in community, and where when you are family or friends, no, and you are there to honor the life and death of your dear friend, you know. So there is many beautiful layers of meaning that came when you do it in this communitarian and natural way, not to do it. That is not when you do it alone with your therapist in a room, you know. So I think that we need more data about how these communities are working and what are the benefits. Not only that they are not doing something bad, but also what are the the beauty that these communities bring in our society.
Yeah, I think this is really fascinating, like this medicalization, which happens in hospitals, where the idea is to take a substance, a molecule, and that's it, nothing else. And with psychedelics, it's a whole culture and the whole ritual and everything,
Of course.
completely different things, approaches.
Of course, and also in this therapeutic room, you are going to deal with a disorder, you know. But all of us will face many different crises in our life. It's not only the death of our loved ones; it's also when we are parents, you know, when we you can say move from one place to another to live, you know. There are many different crises, and we don't need to wait until they are chronified to go to take psilocybin to the room, you know. We can use these tools for prevention, you know, for growth, for cohesion, for spiritual growth, you know, for many other things that help us to not to go to the psychiatric room in one
Yeah,
year.
yeah. Related to this legalization or decriminalization question, we have a attendee question, which I will read aloud. I'm not sure when I should ask the person to speak themselves, but this is anonymous, so that's why I will just read it. It's crazy how few days we get off after a loved one dies. Here in Finland, grief is not seen as an issue, so based on that alone, you cannot get sick leave. It took me over 3 months to get back to work after my loved one died, but the doctor had to put another diagnosis on my records so I could be on sick leave. I wasn't sick though. I was processing grief, and for that I needed time off. Grief needs way more respect than it's given in current society, don't you agree?
Absolutely, absolutely. Claro. Now, to be diagnosed with prolonged grief disorder, claro, there is no consensus between the how do you say, IC11 and the DSM-5. No, it's, there is no consensus in the DSM-5. You need to wait at least 1 year after the death of a loved one, and in the here in Europe, you need to wait at least 6 months. But this is super arbitrarian, you know, because you are putting a cutoff about what is normal or what is not normal, to say this is a disease or not, in a variable that is continuous, so it's absolutely arbitrary, and in the same way that they do it with suffering. If you suffer from this um, cutoff, is normal or is not normal. And suffering is a continuous variable, so if you are putting categorize, you are making something absolutely arbitrary, and that maybe can help us to classify it, in our structure way. But this have no sense. And of course, is what we were talking about before, no? If you lost your child, what is normal? That you begin to work in 6 months, or that is what is not normal? Because it's not the same that you lost your only child by suicide, that you lost your grandpa with 90 years. It's not the same, so grief depends on many multiple factors that creates a unique process that cannot be standardized, and to say you have the symptoms and in this time, so okay, you are sick,
Yeah. And regarding this treatment, if you can call it treatment in the first place, or intervention, or facilitation, healing facilitation, it's if it's medicalized, if you approach it from this pathological perspective, then you would need to pathologize grief in order to start the intervention. But instead, you could just like approach it as like this ayahuasca session as a catalyst for the grieving process already in the beginning, not wait until it like prolongs, but instead like this is basically with all kinds of things, like do we want to treat issues when they have like become really big problems, or do we want to like prevent them from becoming big problems?
Exactly. Exactly. That's it. But it's important also to know that even for taking psychedelics, um, we don't have to wait, after the death of a loved one. We didn't see any case that ayahuasca doesn't work because it was too early. No
Mm.
case. We have attended people with 3 weeks, and I have collected many other experiences in previous studies. No one told me it was too early to drink ayahuasca or to take a psychedelic in my grief process.
Yeah. Yeah, related to this legalization, decriminalization question, there is attendee question: how long or many years do you think it's going to take for Spain and Europe to legalize ayahuasca ceremonies and psychedelics?
Yeah, claro. I don't know. This is very difficult, and probably it depends on each country, no? Let's see this kind of proposal, no, like psychedelic care, that now they are like focusing on on pushing this as a medicines, as a drugs. But I think that this is because it's the first step in order to collect 1 million of signatures, but there is another agenda, to provide another kind of regulations of that. No, I hope.
Yeah.
I don't know. I hope, but I think that for these reasons it's important to collect data in the real, to create real world evidence.
Hmm.
Because we these kind of medicines, the plants itself, the mushrooms, the ayahuasca, the armala, and everything, they are not going to be drugs ever, and they don't have to be, so they are expanding around Europe and other countries within a ceremonial setting, in another ways,
Mm.
and these are the evidence that we need to collect in order to say, okay, there are many people doing this kind of work, and there is no such a problems. There are problems from time to time, no, and we have to see how to prevent that, no.
Yeah, this is an interesting question. Like a thought that pops to mind is that we would just like decriminalize all drugs, or at least psychedelics, and then it would be possible for people to organize retreats and sessions, and people to partake in them without being afraid of consequences. Of course, it happens already now, even in places where it's illegal. But in case of decriminalization, it wouldn't be illegal. But in any case, and that's a different kind of phenomenon compared to medicalizing these substances. Completely two different kinds of like approaches. But then in this decriminalization case, where there are like lots of different organizers of retreats and sessions, would we need some kind of like control over what is happening in these sessions, and so that to prevent any kinds of like abuse or like misconduct, and so, or just like people making profit and like this like not non-integrity. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Claro, I think that the regulation have to be adapted to each country, no? And there are different models that we have now, no? We have one in Netherlands with the truffles. We have another one in Brazil, no, with the ayahuasca religions. We have another one in Oregon now, how they trying to do it. There is a proposal also in Costa Rica, no, to just to give licenses to some places and to how do you say, to ensure that they are like doing some kind of medical criterions to do their work, and if they don't do it next year, they don't renovate the license, because here in Spain we have another kind of strategy that is like a federation of associations. No, here we have the user clubs, users association. No, because here in Spain is decriminalized to use any kind of drug, even heroin. If you do it in your own house. So this is why there are a lot of association of users, of heroin users, of ayahuasca users, of whatever. But what they do is like to create federations. So for example, the associations that share an ethical code, that they, for example, one thing that they cannot do, anybody, is to do publicity, for example. So all of them that they share an ethical code, they are associated in one federation. So people knows which kind of associations work under this ethical code, and if there is a problem in any of these association, they can talk with the federation in order to say there is a misconduct, there is an abuse here, or whatever, no, and they lift this association, and it cannot be in this umbrella.
I
So
see. So it's basically like this self
organization,
self-checking process.
exactly. It's a self organization, no, to in order to not to wait that the political people regulate the things that people are doing, because they try to organize themselves, no.
Yeah. That's really interesting. We have some questions here about ayahuasca recipes. I think this question from Benjamin Mudge, I try to ask if they will answer or ask live.
Hola, hermana.
Hola, hermano. Nice to see you.
Yes, you too. Thank you very much for excellent research. And actually, I had a participant friend who said it was amazing what you
Yes.
did. So thank you so much. Where's my question gone? Right. Do you have more information, please, about the cooking recipe for the ayahuasca batch used in this study? You said that it was from a Santo Daime source, but was it cha, as in liquid tea, or was it mel, as in honey, or was it gel, which is dehydrated in Brazil and then water added in Spain?
It was gel. So, and we hydrated here in Spain. Well, we know that the people from the Santo Daime here, they hydrated here in Spain.
Was it the Madrid Isoflu Church?
It was in Madrid, yes.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Can I just share the reason why I'm asking this is because my research has deconstructed lots of different ayahuasca brews, and there is definitely a different therapeutic benefit depending on the recipe and even depending on the dehydration process of it. So gel is significantly different to what was used, for example, in all the studies with Draulio and Fernanda Polifantos' studies at the university in Brazil, for example, which was a liquid cha. And so you have different ratios. And anyway, it's just a theory that I'm developing about some are closer to MDMA in that like heart opening. The emotion of heart opening that is in an MDMA session, for example. Some batches of ayahuasca can be like that, and some are just very, very stimulating and not heart opening. That depends on this ratio, and that the dehydration makes a difference. That's what I was asking.
Yes. Well, I don't know, because honestly, it was many people there, no, and they drink 2 times, so it was a lot of variability in their experiences, no, and so I don't have they are not the other batch even to compare, no. I can see open heart in many of the experiences, but not in all,
Right.
no. So I don't know. I don't know what to say, Ben.
That's great. Anyway, but that's thankful because I can get your data and compare it to the data from Brazil. And now that I know that it's gel, that's very interesting for me. So thanks for letting me know.
Vale, thank you.
Thank you. There's also a question about how much the different ayahuasca brews differ, and are they used for different purposes or different cases, people?
Maybe Ben is the one to respond to this question, because probably he knows much more about all of that. So Ben, please.
Do you want me to keep going?
Yes, of course.
Yeah. So okay,
Please.
great. Right. So what's really important to understand is that there were 100 tribes using ayahuasca, and there were nearly 100 different recipes for the ayahuasca, which use different plant materials and sometimes admixture plants as well. So there's a huge amount of variation. And traditionally, there were specific brews of tea that were made for a particular occasion or a particular treatment, a particular healing, whether that's considered in spiritual or physical terms. That was common in the indigenous curanderos. Now, there is, I think, a lot of room for exploration of different brews of ayahuasca with different ratios of phytochemicals in them, in the same way that medical cannabis is developed for different strains of medical cannabis are developed specifically for different illnesses, right? And what's going on in medical cannabis is you've got a different ratio of phytochemicals in different strains, and you can do the same in ayahuasca, even when you're using the same Banisteriopsis carpi and Psychotria viridis recipes, you can cook it in these different ways for different outcomes. And I think there's a huge variation, and I've noticed, the research that I've done in Europe, for example, and in Australia, where they've changed the recipe from what is the traditional Brazilian recipe, for example, that you're getting these very different outcomes in the subjective experience of the passengers.
I wonder if there is quantitative research that would examine the associations between the chemical composition of the brew and the subjective or therapeutic effects. Do you know of this kind of research?
No, there has not really been much at all written about that. That's something that I'm very much pushing in my own research. I think the reason why it hasn't been deconstructed in this way is because trying to explain ayahuasca to the scientific community is complicated enough as it is. Just assuming that ayahuasca is one thing. So the scientists have been publishing their articles saying, with basically a common definition of what ayahuasca is, to try and get such a complicated thing published in the first place. And now I think it's time to deconstruct it and get more sophisticated, and definitely. And I know that in the ceremony experiences of people, there are people who are having incredibly intense, terrifying, sometimes paranoid experiences, and it's really just because the tea has been cooked badly. I'm sure of that. And then when you bring in these other plants like Peganum harmala being as a substitute for Banisteriopsis carpi, that's changing the phytochemistry a lot, and people are having very bad trips. And they don't realize it's because someone's messed up the recipe of the ayahuasca, because all the shamans are just saying, oh, here's your ayahuasca here, and just calling it the same thing, ayahuasca, and no one knows because it's just another brown liquid and they can't tell how it was cooked.
This is really fascinating, and I like it that you, Débora, you had this chemical composition in the beginning of your talk, because this is a really interesting and important aspect. But as you said, Benjamin, it's a bit the same as with cannabis or medical cannabis, that it's difficult enough to explain this to most medical professionals, like how it works and the evidence behind it, or the complexities, let alone the possible synergy effect, which is quite difficult to approach. I think I will have a question. This is an interesting one, not about chemical compositions, but about indigenous-based medicine. Mira Veera Aaltonen, I push this button, and Mira Veera, please.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm also asking this because I am also currently working with collaboration with indigenous people in Mexico. So this is an interesting perspective for me. So I want to ask, because ayahuasca is an indigenous-based sacred medicine, how is this considered during the research process? And are you incorporating or using traditional indigenous knowledge in your research? Thank you. Very interesting seminar.
Thank you, Mira. Well, this is always the hot topic, no? And as I explained at the beginning, we cannot bring indigenous cultures and traditions and songs. So when we talk about ayahuasca in here in the West, is not the same as when we talk about ayahuasca in many other cultures. Ayahuasca is a traditional, is a culture. Ayahuasca are songs, are prayers, are a cosmovision. Ayahuasca is absolutely this big picture that we lack here in the Western culture. But claro, when we work here, we cannot bring uh, one of all of these traditions because indigenous culture is not one, is multiple, and there are many different voices and there are many different songs and prayers. But when we want to work with the problems that we have here, we need to work in our own cosmovision, not that suddenly is quite lack of meaning, no? And we don't have these tools, these prayers and everything, no? So for me, honestly, if I have to see, o sea, if I will have to do this study again, I won't do it with ayahuasca because I think now that maybe we need to reconnect with our own traditional medicines, you know, and it's very difficult for us to even to bring ayahuasca from here to make cooperation relation, a cooperative relation with an indigenous community as Santo Daime, for example, no, that we did here very easy, no, because we are close friends. But we can not bring their prayers and everything to this contest because this doesn't mean anything for an atheist here or for a Muslim here, no, to listen the songs of the Syncretic Church of Santo Daime, for example, no. So we, to do that, this kind of a study, we need to create a very, very neutral context to do science and to work with that. No, so when we, so if I have to see a call to action after this study, I will say that I understand that many cultures need their own boundaries to survive and to protect their own culture. And this is okay, of course. And there are others, like Santo Daime Church, that are open and are syncretic and are expanded around the world everywhere, no? So in this case, pues these cultures that are open, these communities that are using it, Santo Daime or many others, you know, pues maybe we can, o sea, these kind of communities are adapted here because it has meaning in our own landscape, in our own context. If not, these cultures don't survive, no? So it's for that that I will I was telling to Josie, no, that maybe we need to take data from the real world evidence where these ayahuasca communities are growing here and what is happening and what are they bringing and how are changing the practices and the cosmovision of the people who are living here, because we cannot import culture from the Shipibo tradition and to bring it here, and that this has meaning for the people who are living here, you know. Maybe we can travel there and to make an immersion there, but not to bring these traditions here and even less in a study. No, I hope I explain myself in a proper way.
Thank you for your response. It's interesting. It's very interesting, and yeah.
Thank you, Miravera.
Thank you. Let's see what kinds of questions we have here. Yeah, one question is like this. It's not that common to hear of people fainting in an ayahuasca session. And do you have an idea about why this happened? So this refers to this like losing consciousness during the session, I would assume.
Yes, yes. Well, when I share it with people from the Santo Daime, because at the beginning I was like a little bit shocked, and they told me that it was not so uncommon also, you know. For me, the two people who faint was in the experimental group because, o sea, it's not two from 727. In reality, it's like two from 60, more or less, that they participate in the follow up also. But it was strange, but it was like in the peak of the effects, around like 15 minutes after drinking the second dose. It was when it was like very, very the peak of the experience, and it was something like if suddenly they cannot, that they are so overwhelming that they lost consciousness. Fortunately, everybody was sitting and lying in the floor, so people just only fade, and for me, the first time I was absolutely panicking, imagine. But we had the privilege to work with Elena Cordeiro, that is the madrina from the Santo Daime Church here in Barcelona, and they have a lot of subtle ways to deal with that, no. So she just approached to the man and just make like in the here, and suddenly he awake, So it was, but he really was white, He began to put white, and he faded, no. And claro, the pity is that after that they don't trip again. They don't have any kind of experience. No, they are like they are out of, no. But it was curious to see also that, for example, the second participant that faded, um, she was dealing with the grief of her father. She couldn't. She had his car in the garage, and each time that he go to the garage, he couldn't see to the car. It was like lock, no, the car. And after the ayahuasca experience, that she fade in the peak, and after that she didn't have any kind of experience. She told me that the next day when she arrived to her house, her car didn't work, so she had to pick the car of his father, and for her was super easy to do it, and she was there feeling super comfortable and singing and everything. So she take out the car from the garage, and she is using it right now. So there are many, many beautiful gifts and presents that we can have from the experience, from the psychedelic experience, from our phenomenology, but it's not all, because we can see these kind of cases that without any kind of psychedelic experience, they can do big changes also in their life. So there are many, many different levels. No, one is maybe this neuroplasticity, another one is the phenomenology, and another one is like the things that happen between the group when they are drinking together. Another one is what happened with nature, because as this participant that I read was explaining, she said. All my dear ones are these trunks where I can rest, and this is because she was resting in a tree. In one moment that she went out and she felt supported by these trees and by these beings that are in this local place. And after that, this is another spiritual, and I don't know how can tell layer, where this participant without any kind of phenomenology experience, pues this other medium appear in Finland and respond the message that she has. I don't know. There are many, many layers in which this grief processes can be open and be healed when we do these kind of ceremonies together.
Yeah, this is really interesting. All these aspects of the experience. Did you have in your study some psychometric measures of the quality of the experience, like what they were undergoing? I really like this qualitative data and the interviews that you presented, but did you also have some questionnaires?
Yes, we have the five dimensional altitude of consciousness that I show in this slide, and
Yeah.
we have the how do you say, the APQ, that is this one, but is more about psychological flexibility, no, about how the difficult experiences can trigger some avoidance processes or acceptance processes, no, and we are about to how do you say, to analyze this data. I don't have
Yeah.
the response yet, so.
Yeah, this APEC questionnaire is about psychological inflexibility, and it went down. So it's basically like a measure of psychological flexibility going up, which is a bit curious, but it's a feature of the questionnaire. I'm thinking of these like mystical type features, the 5D scale. There is the oceanic boundlessness scale, and but what do you think of these? Like, because in some previous, or in like really most of the previous psychedelic therapeutic trials, the acute experience quality predicts quite strongly, something like zero point 0.4 correlation, the outcome.
Hmm.
So, are you going to assess this? For
Hmm.
example, the oceanic boundlessness might predict the outcomes. That would be interesting.
Yeah. Well, this is one thing. This is something that we can do, but we have different mechanism of change. You know,
Mhm.
meaning making. We have psychological flexibility with the AIQ2, and we have a circularity scale. We have the phenomenological experience with the 5D ASC, and probably as we don't have a very big sample, we need to make some previous analysis, because if we put all the mechanism of change in the model, there is not sample enough to find a moderation relation, no? So let's see what we can see in the pre-analysis, and after that, what we can choose to do, no? But let me tell you that, so for me, it's not some kind of type of phenomenology that makes like the change, no? So it's not many. So most of the participants didn't have a mystical experience in the way that is conceptualized, you know. For around 40% of the participants had an experience of connection with the disease in a visual way or in a phenomenological way, you know, in a somatosensory way or whatever, no? And I can say, seen from outside, no, and in a clinical, with my clinical eyes, you know, that these kind of experiences can make a big difference in the grief process, you know, and it's because of that, no, it's because people in grief are they are connected with an internal image of the disease that is really painful, you know, is the last day of the, you know, the last day that they saw, or this, how do you say, uh, fight that they had, and this is an unfinished business that they are making guilt and are ruminating, you know, and when they can connect with them and to have this other internal image, you know, because they can see that they are okay, you know, in what way, in a visual way or in a perceptual way or whatever, the connection change immediately, and this make a big click in the grief process. But this is not identified yet as a mechanism of change in grief. You know, we don't have scales to assess this process because we don't conceive yet that we can continue have a connection with them, you know, and that these experiences happen, you know, and have this powerful potential, you know, to change a grief process. It's not conceived yet, Jose. We have to design. There are many things to do yet, still in the grief area with psychedelics.
Yeah, this is really interesting. Whether there is any kind of like a unified common core to all psychedelic experiences that would be therapeutic to all conditions or all kinds of suffering. I personally find it unlikely. I believe that it's personal to each individual. But this course that you presented, this meaning made, and the outcome, the correlation was something like 0.7. It's like extremely high. So was this meaning made some questionnaire rating also?
Yes, yes, is the
I see.
ISLES is called ISLES short form. Integration of a stressful life experience is about meaning, the meaning made from the meaning that you have made from a stressful life experience like death, for example. Let me turn on the light, please.
Yes, do that.
Yeah, so meaning made, as we explained at the beginning, no, this is the oldest mechanism of change in grief and from existential fear of death, no, because in our narratives is meaningless, no, life and death is meaningless. We are just subproducts and random and and it's very difficult to find meaning to that, and people struggle with suicide for that, because if life doesn't have meaning, why I'm going to continue suffering, so meaning and psychedelics and these kind of experiences are bring a lot of meaning. It's not just in the form of insights, is in the way that you perceive the experience in your own body, in the way that you change your perspectives on some problem, on some people, or another thing. They are like meaning generators, very powerful. So these are very incredible tools to make meaning and to see death and life from another view when your experience is focused on death and life, no?
Yeah, and I really find it interesting how this therapeutic or psychological intervention of meaning making that you had, how it might be synergistic with ayahuasca. Specifically, it would be interesting to see also like comparing different kinds of psychological interventions combined with ayahuasca, like also three arms group, for example, where you have well, let's say randomly cognitive behavioral therapy and meaning making therapy, and then a control group.
Yes, yes, oh, absolutely. Claro, in our case, in our study, we have seen an increase in meaning made. Probably is the mechanism of change that makes more differences at all, no? But we are not sure if it's because of the ayahuasca itself, or is because of the integration process, because the integration process is also a focus on making meaning of the ayahuasca experience, or is because of the psychotherapy, because the psychotherapy is focused on meaning making. When we compare the process of psychotherapy alone with ayahuasca plus psychotherapy, we see that ayahuasca plus psychotherapy makes more meaning than ayahuasca alone. But we don't know if it's also the integration process is essential in this in making meaning of that, no? And the methodology for integrate is absolutely based on focus on give meaning, no? So we have a detailed description in these publications. No,
Yeah,
you are describing the phenomenology of the experience as with a lot of detail and care, no? And we are weaving three three lines, no? Three threads, narrative threads, no? What you were experiencing, seeing, perceiving, or whatever, what was happening outside, what were you feeling when this was happening, and the reflective the reflexive like the reflection voice, no, about And why do you think that this was happening, or what do you think that is the meaning of that? No, so you are woven these three lines to assimilate this experience, and after that came the process of accommodation, how this world or these people or the disease or whatever, how your world change in the light of this experience, you know.
Yeah.
It's a cognitive integration, you know. There are
Yeah.
many other models, no, but this is the one that we use, and this is absolutely focused on meaning making.
Yeah, I'm thinking about Viktor Frankl's this like existential or like finding meaning in distressing events, but that's another topic. I will take two more questions from the audience because there is this personal interest of many people that they would like to partake personally in this kind of ceremony or intervention, however you call it. One person asks, if I'm ready to go to ceremony, how to choose the right one? What would you say to a person who is looking for this kind of relief?
Yeah, I don't know what to say. Of course, I think that this depends on the personal integrity of the people, but also from the community and the structure that is there. It depends on the quality of the ayahuasca. It depends on the ethical code that they have. Well, I think that the most important is uh, to talk with people and with the community and to have the feedback of people that have worked with someone, and yes, to make your, how do you say, your research, no, in many different levels, no.
Yeah, yeah, it's like human business, humans meeting each other and building rapport and getting into circles. The final question for you is, I just read it aloud now. I'd love to hear a bit about your professional background. What got you interested in researching ayahuasca in general and ayahuasca and grief in particular?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, when I was in the last year of psychology, I had the opportunity to go to Pseudomapia, that is the capital of the Santo Daime, that is in the Brazilian rainforest. No, they drink ayahuasca like maybe once per week or twice per month. Because they are is their sacrament. No, these are the main place in the world um, to make ayahuasca for all the churches that are around the world. No, so I had the opportunity to go there to make some research on the neurological and psychopathological and well-being of all these people who have been drinking ayahuasca for more than 15 years in this way, no, like very, very often. And claro, for me, it was an initiation, no, for me to arrive there with 24 years, in the jungle with all these people drinking together, with all these personal stories behind all these people drinking together. Bueno, for me, it was like a point of no return, and I create a personal relation with ayahuasca that for me is sacred, no? So I have been working on that, focus on this plant as I think that ayahuasca used me, I don't know if I was interested or ayahuasca used me to do this kind of research. I'm not really sure, because in reality, I couldn't look to another place. It was like a connection with this plant. So at some point, one of my friends from this research and colleague commit suicide, and it was a very difficult situation for me. And I was psychologist. I was like thinking what to do, no, like to start a psychotherapeutic session because I was very angry with everything that happened, or to drink ayahuasca. And I drink ayahuasca, and all this anger and frustration and pain was transforming in compassion, no, because I could see this vulnerable life living this world, no, instead of all of the anger, no, that comes with a suicide like that, and the guilt and everything. So for me, it was like, okay, this helped me. I'm going to collect experiences from other people, no, that maybe ayahuasca helped them in their grief process. And when I begin to collect experiences, I saw that the way that ayahuasca can help in that, and I say not only ayahuasca, probably other plants and other psychedelic, it was wider than what I expected at the beginning. So I say, okay, pues let's assess grief in people that goes, for example, to the Temple of the Way of Light, one of the biggest center in the Amazonian, no, that work under the traditional umbrella of the Shipibo Conibo culture. And these are Western people, no, that are grieving their loved ones, no. So I assess the people at the beginning, before and after, and 1 year after, no, and we saw that this was working very well. So I said, okay, pues let's start a pilot study to see how can this ayahuasca can be hold in our cultural context, no? And meaning making allows you to give your own meaning, and maybe it's a good paradigm. So I begin to learn this approach of psychotherapy, and at the beginning to do a pilot study working with ayahuasca. And when I saw the results in my face, in this moment I said, okay, I have to do a bigger study, because there were cases that will be in my heart forever, no, and one of them is published also, a case report, and I say, okay, pues let's do it in a bigger way, no? And that's what we did until now.
Thank you so much. This has been really fascinating, and I really appreciate you opening this like personal background as well. I think most of us psychedelic researchers have these kind of connections. Yes. Thank you so much
Thank you to
again.
you.
This has
Thank
been
you.
really
Yes.
fascinating.
Thank you to you.